Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. I am coming to you live from the hottest day of the summer so far. It is predicted to be 97 today here. I look out at my garden, my clients are looking at their gardens, you're probably looking at your garden and thinking, what can I do in the middle of the summer to just give it a boost, to help it look a little bit less tired? I want to share with you today a couple of strategies that I personally use for sprucing up my own garden and that I'm planning to implement for clients as well. I will do this planting, show you where things end up, and then provide a list of some of my top summer recommendations, not on this table, that I will be implementing for various gardens for a summer refresh, just layer to make everything look good at this time of year. My first strategy is use annuals. Now, this is a punctuation approach. If you have a perennial garden, you don't want to have to replant it every single year. But there are a few annuals that I found to be really helpful in bridging that spring to summer gap and giving you something that will just look good all season long. And of course, zinnias are no surprise there. I started those inside myself and have a whole block of them planted out. They're looking great right now. And as long as I keep them fed and deadheaded, they will go all summer. Another one is Angelonia. This is a smaller in stature plant, but it looks really great to kind of liven up the edge of a perennial planting. At the front side where you can have something lower that's still visible, Angelonia is a great one. It's called summer snapdragon for a reason. Again, if you keep it deadheaded and you feed it, it will go all summer. Another one that I love, unfortunately, it doesn't quite perennialize here. We're a little bit too cold in our winters, but this is Mexican sage, and it has really wonderful bright purple spires that will start coming on soon. Another strategy, now these are still annuals, but a little bit of a different focus of annuals. Annual grasses can be really great in a mixed planting. This purple fountain grass grows like crazy, loves the heat, has beautiful spires in later summer, but it is unfazed by really, really hot weather and will carry your planting through. Unfortunately, the nursery only had 2 of them. I like to plant in trios of things, definitely not just one of something. Although now that I'm telling you that, I'm about to break that rule. I'm putting a couple of things in my kitchen garden. This is pineapple sage. I only really have room for one because it's in a raised bed, but I need a spot to fill in. I love the flowers. They are great for pollinators. Even if I don't use it for culinary, I may. Let's just say I'll put it in a stir fry someday. Another one that I'm putting in my kitchen garden is eucalyptus for the foliage, but also to give that cool summer texture. You can go more in that direction with edible filler for a perennial or cutting garden, but those 2 are going in my kitchen garden. Now for another edible. This one is a cardoon. This comes from the Mediterranean and really thrives in hot. So this is going to be my friend. I'm actually going to put this one out in the cutting garden. It gets huge, very dramatic, great space filler. It's not as much about the flowers as it is about the foliage. And I have 3 of those to go out in my perennial garden and kind of give me some oomph. I have 3 other perennial selections here. Coneflower is a staple. I just have an area that I don't have enough white in. And white, I feel in the middle of the summer, is kind of essential for lifting a planting. I find that the time I enjoy the garden in the months of June, July, August, and sometimes even into September is the early morning and early evening. Now, white shows up beautifully in low light. So there is this quality of both it makes you feel a little cooler, and it also reflects the limited amount of light back to you at golden hour, at dusk. It's just really nice to have white things in the garden for that reason. So I'm adding more of this. Specifically, this one is Powwow White, which gets about 2 feet tall. It's not huge, it's kind of a nice median white, and it doesn't seed around a lot, but I am going to try to save seed and see if I can make a little bit more of it. This dwarf Eupatorium Joe Pie Weed is a selection that's bred to be a little bit shorter. I think this one is about 2.5 feet tall. The native species gets really big. That's hard to fit in a residential space of normal proportions. And for me, the dwarf one is a little better, but you can see on this plant, the blooms are coming on now. This is a great one for midsummer, and it's native, and so it is very tolerant of our crazy heat here. This is Amsonia butterscotch. This gets a gorgeous fall color, and it blooms starry white blue flowers. Probably not going to see a lot on it this year, but I'm hoping for some interest in fall. Again, I got 3 of them so that I can do a trio of planting in one bed that I have. I will get these in the ground and then kind of walk through what I've put where and why. But again, it'll be a mix of flowering annuals, annual grasses, and annual herbs like the cardoon that are just big foliage drama and filler. And then more of a long-term game, 3 different perennials that I know will serve me well over time in this one garden section. Because I'm showing you what I'm doing, obviously this is just some choices that I made for the space that I have, but there are quite a few really good options. Now, a lot of them are either in the salvia, the sage family. Those do very well in heat through the middle of the summer, or things that have daisy, round daisy-like flowers. So that would be Leucanthemum, Shasta daisy, Gaillardia, the blanket flower, Helenium, sneezeweed, this echinacea, of course, Coreopsis, different Rudbeckias. All of those have this sort of round face with a center that gives a nice punch in the garden. A lot of them are in warm, hot colors. Some people don't love yellows and oranges. I think they can be used very tastefully. I think they really help liven up and allow the plant palette. But if you're not a yellow-orange person, then the white coneflower and some of the cooler toned sages, purples, blues, are going to be ideal for you. One more category that I did not mention that requires some planning ahead. So not useful in this moment, but just for your thinking and planning towards next summer, is the whole category of summer bulbs. There are so many fabulous lilies that have a moment in the midsummer. I have tiger lilies in my garden right now. There's lots of mardigan lilies. There are native lilies. There are the big, huge Asian lilies. I have not historically thought of myself as a lily person, but they do provide the punch in the garden, and you're not having to replant them every year because it's a bulb. It comes up and does its thing in the middle of the summer, and it's showy and it's powerful, and it helps you get through that kind of midsummer what's looking special hump. This is a view of my perennial garden. The top left quadrant is where I have my block of zinnias and dahlias planted. There are some other things in there too, like roses and boxwood and fennel, but that is a heavily annual planting of flowers that I come to cut from. This area here is the quadrant that needed the most help, and it is where most of the plants on the table went. You can see anything that looks small tucked within the other things. There's a good bit in here that is permanent and is doing well, but but I also had a big area in the middle that was lackluster and just needed a refresh. So I am hoping in the next month or so that all of these new plantings will come into their own and really give my garden some fresh life. Here is a list of top plant selections for a heat-loving midsummer garden. I broke them up by my strategies from the beginning of this video, starting with annual flowers, then annual foliage, onto perennials, and finishing with bulbs and tubers. And this, of course, is not an exhaustive list. There are shrubs and trees that help carry the bloom season through this part of the year. But if you are looking specifically to boost a perennial garden, I hope you find this helpful. I just spent about 2.5 hours at a nursery, and this is actually a really good practice. Depending on your zone, what I'm sharing right here may not exactly apply to your timing, but if you go to your local nursery or garden center and you look at what's blooming, just make a habit, take pictures, take notes. What's blooming right now? And that's not going to always be an exact true timeline because of the cycle of how things are produced for the nursery industry. Some things are made to bloom earlier or later, or because they've been in greenhouses or stored a certain way, then that timing may be off a little bit, but you can still get a pretty good idea of when something is going to bloom. And you see, okay, that clearly is done. This looks good now, and that is coming on. And you can just learn the cycle of where plants are. Look for specifically this size of 4-inch pot, or round or square, can be a more affordable option than buying full gallons. Not everything is available that way, but this stuff in this size, they're going to grow. So anything that I can buy smaller, I do. And that is a way to cut your price per plant in half as well. All right, stay cool everyone, and happy gardening.